Okay, so to continue on from the previous lesson, what I want you to do first is remove the grease pencil. Now here I'm going to go a bit slow because we're going to be navigating quite a bit. So in the previous lesson you saw that we were evaluating this bone in world space. So I want you to switch this to pose space. Okay? Now, the question is that what exactly is this bone doing in pose space? So what we can do is simply first switch this to object mode. We can see that the axis that is being displayed on the armature is showing that along the x-axis, if you draw from the origin, this is where this bone is. So this information is now going to be given to the owner object in local space. So what that simply means is that if you do shift middle mouse button, if you draw a line from the center of its local coordinate system along the x, it's going to go over here. Okay? Now press the escape key to get out of this. Now go ahead and switch this to pose mode. Now go ahead and click this. And here you're going to switch this to pose space. Now notice that on the armature's axis along the y-axis, this bone really hasn't moved at all. Okay? So now if we go ahead and zoom in and take a look at this bone, you can actually click it and press the period key to home in on it. If you take a look, this bone is going to be flat up against the grid, right? Because it hasn't moved along its local y at all. That's what this is showing. So if we click over here and move this along the pose space y-axis, which belongs to the armature, you'll notice that it's just going to go up. That's what this means, okay? Now, if we press the 7 key to go to the top view, you'll notice that this bone has moved along its z-axis to the right. Now, the reason it did that because this is being evaluated in local space. So if we go to this bone, do the middle mouse button, you can see that according to pose space, if we compare this with the z-axis, you can see that if we position it like this, you can see that according to the z, it's showing that it actually is up on a z. So that information on a z, if you move this, you'll see that this bone really moves along. It's a local z. See? It's a pretty straightforward concept as to how this is working. And that's it. Okay? Now go ahead and remove this. Now I want you to go ahead and click this. And now I want you to switch to local space. Okay. Now click on this bone and do Alt G to reset its location. Okay, so now what we're going to do is take a look at how does this work with local with parent. Now to understand this is going to get a bit tricky to do, so I'm just going to do this a little slowly, okay? Now what I want you to do is first switch to edit mode and click on this bone, do Shift D to duplicate it, right click to cancel, press the S key to scale it, and over here just click on this red arrow and move it over here. Now click on this bone, press the Shift key down, click on this one, do Control P, and make sure that you do keep offset. If you do connected, it will take the head of the child and move it to the tail of the parent. That's not what we want, so do keep offset. Okay, now go ahead and switch to pose mode. Now over here, if we click on this bone, because both the target and the owner is being evaluated in local space, only when we click on this bone and let it move along its x-axis, this bone is going to move along its x-axis. Pretty straightforward. Now do Alt G. Now when we click on the parent, as you know that when the parent moves, it always makes sure, or the child always makes sure that it's going to keep its offset. So when you click on this X, you'll notice that the child is moving, but this bone is not going to budge because this bone is showing that it has never moved from its original location in edit mode. So what exactly does this mean? What this means is that there are two things going on over here. When you click on the parent and actually press the R key to rotate it this way, what it's going on is just like in object mode, the local coordinate system that belongs to this child is actually traveling with it. We can see this by simply switching this to local space. Now you'll notice that if we do the middle mouse button to just rotate a bit, if we click on its x-axis, you'll notice that only the x value changes because the local coordinate system is traveling with it, just like on y. And if you rotate it kind of like this, do on z, you'll see that it travels. Okay, so that's the first thing that's going on over here. So let's actually see this visually. So what I want you to do is click this grid, press the shift key down, click on this one, do shift D to duplicate it, and right click to cancel. Now go ahead, go to the constraints tab and just click on a grid. It doesn't matter really which one you select. Now over here we're going to switch this, of course, to the bone 1 over here. Okay, so go ahead and turn this on. So you'll notice that this is going to travel with it. So now when you have this over here, what I want you to do is do Control A and do visual transform, and now shut these off. So now you'll see that this is how this is. Okay, the local coordinate system will travel with this bone when you are rotating its parent. So go ahead and click this. Now you'll see that when you move along the x, y, it was only moving along the x and moving along the z. Okay, so that's what it is. It moves along the z. Here I'm going to do Alt G to reset its location. Now the question is, well, how is this grid going to be used? Now this is where it gets interesting. Now when we click on this object and say that, okay, go to the constraints tab, now because the child has a parent, we want to say that local with parent. Remember, this is just optional. So when you click it, you'll see that this bone is ending up over here. What exactly is going on? Because this doesn't seem to match what's going on over here. Now to understand this, what you actually have to do is, having this bone selected, turn all of these off. Okay, now first I want you to click on Z. Notice that if we look at how this bone has moved along Z, it's moved to the right on its local. Okay, so where did it get this information from? So if you press the 7 key to go to the top view, you can see that if we look at the axis that is being displayed on its original local coordinate system that belongs to this bone, if we click on the line tool, what's happening is that here it's looking at, okay, along the z-axis, this is where this bone is. And that information is being handed off to it in this way. That's what's going on. Press the escape key and now go ahead and click on this bone. Now let's look at X. When we do X, we can see that, okay, well, if we look at this local coordinate system that used to belong to this bone, if we draw a line over here, this is where it is on X. So that information now is being given along its X over here. So this is why it ends up over here. Press the escape key. Now the only remaining issue here is that when we click on this bone and now do Y, this bone ends up over here. So what's going on over here? So what is happening is that if you take a look, you can see that along the y-axis, this bone has moved up. So that information is being handed off to this bone. So this is how this works. So this means that this bone is actually talking about two things. First, it knows that wherever the parent goes, it will follow the parent and take its local coordinate system with it. But when you say that local with parent, it's actually going to give the information, or the information that's being given to you is going to be according to the bone that it is in edit mode. Okay, so that can never change. This is why it appears over here, because it's looking at, according to its local coordinate system, where did this bone go. That's all this is. Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, now what I want you to do is remove the grease pencil. Now we're going to take a look at another issue over here. Click it. What happens when you do this local with parent? This bone doesn't even have a parent. Now, when we do this, you're going to see something very interesting. This bone is going to move. Okay, so what's going on over here? So what's basically happening here is that this bone, because it doesn't have a parent, it's just going to use the armature itself. Now, you can see this by simply doing the same thing, removing all this. Click on Z. Now, when we do Z, remember, it's moving along the Z up, okay? Now, when we switch this to local, before it was moving along a Z over here because it was looking at how far this bone was according to the Z axis over here. See, if we press the 7 key, this is where this is. So over here, according to the armature axis, right, if we click on this bone and do local with parent, it's now just throwing it up. Now when we do X, it's going to move according to the armature x-axis over here, where before, according to this system, according to the X, it was moving over here. That's where this is. Okay? Now when we enable Y, it's of course going to move along the Y. If you press the 7 key, it's going to move over here. But according to this system, Y is basically going from up here. That's all that's going on. Okay? So you might find this concept useful if you for some reason need to do local with parent, meaning that you just want to use the armature as a parent, its axis. Anyways, that's how this whole concept works. So let's go ahead and now just reload this file, and let's go ahead and remove the grease pencil, switch this to local space and local space, and just press the period key to home in on it, zoom out, and here I'm just going to put it like this, and let's just do file, and here we can do save as, and let's just save it. I'm just going to click on this plus sign, so it will be bone concept 7.blend. Go ahead and save this. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you.